Hey everybody, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Muhammad. This is Heavy Metal FPL, and in this video, I'm gonna dissect this horrible game week that we have just currently gone through. So without further ado, let's jump straight into it. So it's worth going into a little bit of detail just to know exactly how bad this game week was, right? So I've got my usual premium picks that I put on in the last video. All of those guys blanked except for one, which was Trippier. Newcastle won 1-0 against Arsenal in what was a controversial decision, and he got 9 points. All the rest messed up, and they did not give us any points. So you've got Haaland, who was subbed off at halftime with an injury, and he's a bit of an injury concern right now. You've got Alvarez, who stayed on and didn't do anything. Man City won 6-1 in their match against Bournemouth, and most of the guys that everyone owns did not do anything. But if you own Doku, then good on you. It's a very left field pick, but that's just the kind of game week that this was. It's the left field picks that kind of won out. So who else was there? We've got Son and Madison. Yesterday they lost 4-1 against Chelsea. They both didn't do anything. Madison was taken off at halftime as well as a result of Tottenham being one person down, and then they ended up being two people down with two red cards. Who else? Aston Villa lost 2-0 against Nottingham Forest. And so Watkins blanked, Cash blanked. He was taken off. He was taken off before 60 minutes as well. So he ended up with a blank and 0 points. Diaby blanked. You've got Salah over here. Liverpool drew against Luton 1-1. He blanked as well. Chan got some points for me. Those were very, very welcome this week. He got 5 points as a result of an assist. Simicas did not start this week. He came on in the last 15 minutes of the match, so he got me a measly 1 pointer. And Areola got 1 point for me, and I don't think I've had a single goalkeeper return since the beginning of the season. So West Ham, with all the easy fixtures that they're having, they seem to still be in very bad form and are not getting me any points. If you had Bowen on your team, though, good on you because he did score a goal in their match up against Brentford where they lost 3-2. And so while West Ham are losing, Bowen seems to still be possibly their best pick at this point. I think, look, a lot of people got a lot of points on their bench. So for me, I was not an exception to that. I got Lascelles on my bench. He was 9 points, and also Archer 9 points on the bench. I think it's what how many points did my bench get? I got about 19 points on my bench and 27 points on my starting lineup. So very, very close over there. And I think it's the case for a lot of different people. So what do you do after a game week like this, right? Like what I know the tempting reaction is just to sell a lot of your players, but I think it's important to try and just not overreact, not be too hasty, not be too knee jerky. I've pulled up the results of game week 11 over here just so you can see how much of an anomaly they are. I mean, like all the small teams ended up getting good results. And it's not something that's usually the case. So Liverpool drawing 1-1 against Luton, Nottingham Forest beating Aston Villa 2-0. Yeah, Newcastle, all your big teams basically stumbled, right? Like Arsenal lost. They had a hard fixture, but they also lost. Sheffield United, bottom of the league, they went 2-1 against Wolves. Man City, I mean, it's an expected result, but just you know, them having that many goals and none of them having to do with Holland or Alvarez is not something that's very common. You've got Everton versus Brighton. That's 1-1. Brighton are continuing to stumble. They're showing a bit of a trend, but also this is a bit of a shocking result. Not as bad as last season's result when Everton beat Brighton with 5 goals, but still, it's unexpected, right? Spurs losing 1-4 to Chelsea is also very, very unexpected. Yeah, Man United, you'd expect them to win 1-0 against Fulham. So if you had Bruno in your team, then good on you. If you still have him in your team somehow, but I wouldn't go as far as to buy him as of the moment. So if I want to go back to my team right now and I want to see like what my transfer options are for the next week, I want to look at this and see what are my actual weak points over here. So Simicast is a bit of a worry for me right now, just because. he didn't start the match and he only came on for 15 minutes. But I think that's the least of my concerns. I think it's the obvious yellow flags here are Cash and Holland, right? Because not because of their form and not because they're not good FPL picks, but just because of the fact that they might be injured and they might miss a match. So that's one thing for me to consider. I mean, Holland, what Pep said is that he's possibly going to be back for their next match against Chelsea. It's a big match, so I think that no matter what the case is, they'd want him to play, right? They'd want to get those 3 points up against Chelsea. So I'm gonna have to wait out on this one. There's European fixtures as well coming up, so I'm gonna wait and see the injury news as we come up to game week 12. And it's also important to note that there's an international break right after that. So whatever it is, if there's an injury, you'll get an extra week for them to recover, an extra 2 weeks actually for them to recover. So whatever it is, you're not going to be missing out on an injured player for a very long time. And that's why I'm very tempted to keep Holland or Cash in my team, no matter what the circumstances are. I've got an okay bench. So I've got like all three of these guys, Taylor, Lascelles, and Archer. All of them actually come off, like, they will come off my bench if needed. Barring any like FPL shenanigans like Holland starting for 5 minutes or whatnot. My bench has me covered in this case. They are all starters. So Lascelles, I got lucky with him. I got him earlier. He was at 3.9 when I got him, but he is a starter for Newcastle, and I think he's even more of a starter now, considering that Botman is laid off for a while, and also Byrne is laid off for a while. In addition to that, so yeah, I've got Cash as an injury concern, and I've got Holland as an injury concern. They are the two that I would maybe consider taking off. Mostly Cash, I think, but not Holland. I'd have to be 100% sure. I still don't think Holland is a bad pick. I still think even with Man City's upcoming hard fixtures, he's still their guy, and he is the guy that most chances come in for. Julian Alvarez is a bit of a concern for me right now. Look, he's really, really good, and it's like we all ought to be grateful that there's a Man City attacker who is not getting subbed off by Pep every other match. So that's something we ought to be grateful for. I keep thinking about that every time I think of selling Alvarez. He's in a bad run of form currently, just 3 matches in a row with him not doing anything. But just the fact that he's starting for City makes him a threat to everyone else, in my opinion. But that being said, I am considering possibly taking a punt on someone else, and I'll come to that in the next section of this video. But I still think he's a really good pick, and I would have a very hard time getting rid of him. So before I get into my transfer tips for game week 12, I just thought I'd pull up the fixtures over here just to see what we could possibly target. So we've got a bunch of interesting fixtures, a bunch of good interesting fixtures that we could potentially jump on. So there's Arsenal versus Burnley. That's very, very tempting. You've got Man United versus Luton. If you might consider that you want to have a Man United asset on your team, there is that. Yeah, Newcastle versus Bournemouth is there. There's also Brighton versus Sheffield United. That's a really, really good fixture. If there's something that we've learned from the past game weeks, it's that Sheffield United are more of the team that you want to target, and Burnley as well. I think Burnley and Sheffield, at least based on the evidence that we have this season, are looking like more of the teams that concede a lot of goals and are likely to put up less of a fight or just give up the game with conceding a lot of goals when compared to Luton or Nottingham Forest. So Nottingham Forest, I read a stat recently that they're one of the teams who have one of the best home records, and they're only underneath Liverpool and Man City in that regard. Um, so that's one to consider whenever you're looking at a team that might have an away fixture against Nottingham Forest. If you're thinking that that might be an easy fixture, you might have to think twice about that in the future. So yeah, Nottingham Forest are good. You've got Luton as well. I think they're giving us second thoughts now. It's not the first time that this has happened when there's a big team that's playing against them and then they end up doing quite well. So it happened earlier in the season against Spurs, where Spurs struggled a lot against them and they only got the win with scraping by with one goal, and Son and Madison, Son blanked in that week. And you also had Aston Villa just last week. They won against them 3-1, but they were playing at home. And, it wasn't as much of a free-flowing game as you would like to expect. So they're a small team, but they put up a bit of a fight when they come up against the big guns. So that's one thing to consider when you've got a team that's playing at home versus Luton. So Man United, I wouldn't advise you anyways on getting any of their assets, just given the form that they're in and the crisis that they're going through. But if you want to take a punt on someone like Bruno, it's like, I wouldn't hold you back, but I still think that there's a lot of better picks that you could go for, especially this game week. That being said, let's have a look at my transfer options for this week. I've got three over here that are labeled. I think, like, just given in mind the fixtures that we have Arsenal playing against Burnley. That's why I'm really eyeing their assets. I don't have a single Arsenal player in my team, and I think that might tend to punish me. So I've got Alvarez to Nketiah. I like Nketiah for next week. I'm just not so sure about all of the Arsenal assets at the moment, but him being at 5.6 million, I think he just rose as of this morning to 5.7. Yeah, it's a way for me to take a punt. So one the harder part for me is not getting Nketiah, it's letting go of Alvarez, who I think is still a really good pick. But this is what's convincing me. Man City have a really hard, like they have a tough run of fixtures coming up. And even though they're Man City, I think like no fixture is actually hard for them. I think they can beat anyone on their day, right? But you have to consider this. They're playing against Chelsea next. Then they come back from the international break and they play against Liverpool, and then they play against Tottenham, and then against Aston Villa. That's a very, very tough run of fixtures. Those are the best teams, barring Chelsea. Those are the best teams in the league as of the moment. So, look, Man City could still win all of those games, right? But if there's any time that I might want to take a punt on someone other than Alvarez, this might be the time. And with Nketiah coming up against Burnley and him only at 5.6 million as far as we know, a guaranteed starter, it's very, very tempting for me. So this is like, I think my top ranked transfer out of these three. Got Cash to Saliba. I would only do this if I'm 100% sure that Cash is off with an injury. So Saliba's one option, Dunk is another option, but I think Saliba's a better one just because I try to think of my transfers in more of a long-term view. And Saliba's one I would have in my team for a much longer term than Dunk. I think Arsenal's defense is better, and I think they're just in better form. And yeah, Saliba would be a season keeper for me, an Arsenal defender. Yeah, they've got a good run of fixtures now, and he's someone that I would not fancy. He doesn't have the same worries as Gabriel has with being rotated every now and then. Knock on wood, hopefully that doesn't happen anytime soon. But yeah, Saliba is an option for me, but I would only consider him if Cash is guaranteed to not be playing. And even then, I think even if even if Cash turns out to be injured, barring it's not a long-term injury that might take him off my team for the next game weeks after the international break, for a very, very long time, let's say until like December or something. If he's injured for just next week, then he's potentially going to come back after the international break. Then I would probably look at not selling Cash as of now. Another option for me is Diaby to Mitoma, but this seems like a sideways move as well. So you've got Aston Villa. They're playing against Fulham at home next, so a very good fixture. You've got Mitoma, Brighton play against Sheffield United at home. Also a very, very good fixture, possibly way better than the Aston Villa one. But I'm not very convinced by how Brighton are playing right now. They stumbled yet again. If there's any fixture for them to bounce back, it's this current one against Sheffield United. But I'm weighing that against Aston Villa, playing Fulham at home. I know it's an easier fixture, but it just seems like a sideways move. I could see this going wrong. I can see like me selling Diaby and getting Mitoma, and then Diaby being the one, since they're playing against Fulham at home, like him getting all the points. And so it just seems like a waste of a transfer. If there is one that makes the most sense to me, it's number one over here with Alvarez to Nketiah. But I'm gonna wait on it until we get more news. There's the European fixtures. There's one's playing today, and there are European fixtures tomorrow. And then Aston Villa also play later in the European Conference League. They play, I think, on Thursday. So I'll have to see what happens with these players before I make a decision. Haaland is not on my chopping block whatsoever as of now because, as far as we know, his injury is short term, and Pep said he's going to play in the next match. So I'm going to wait on more news for that. But for now, these are my initial thoughts after this game week. That wraps it up for this video, guys. Sorry, I recorded first thing in the morning today. The sun is still in my face. I'm a bit groggy. I just woke up. I wanted for a change to get this video out first thing in the morning. But I think I got all the information that I needed to out. And if you enjoyed this video and you like what I do, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Until then, I'm gonna bounce and I will see you all later.